Welcome, my dear friends, to this fourth session of the webinar organized by the Fipresci-India. Fipresci-India is the India chapter of the International Federation of Film Critics, composed of more than 50 national federations, having their juries installed in more than 80 international film festivals, including Cannes, Berlin, Karlovy, etc. So we are organizing this series of sessions on different aspects of cinema to study different issues on cinema. And today's session is on Bengali cinema. Today we have an esteemed panel with us. Let me introduce the speakers of today's panel. First, Mr. Atanu Ghosh. Atanu Ghosh, in alphabetic order, I am doing it. Mr. Atanu Ghosh is a national award-winning filmmaker. He made his first film in 2003, I think, 2009. Yes, 2009. It was Umshumanir Chowi. It was in Indian Panorama, and so far he made 8 feature films. The last one is Bini Shutoy. It has not been released. It was premiered in Kerala Film Festival in this December. And 2017, his film Mayurakshi got the national award. Welcome Atanu in this session. And then we have with us Mr. Firdausul Hassan. He is a famous producer and he is the president of the Film Federation of India, the highest body of the film producers and distributors of India, who nominates the Oscar from the India section, their organization. And Hassan is a very acclaimed producer. He got National Award for Mayurakshi along with Atanu. And he has more than 10 films in his credential, and he promotes the new talent, search for the new talent. He promotes the debutant filmmakers. And the last film, now he is making another, right now he is making a film by Blatto Boshu. He is in a dictionary, which is not yet been finished. Welcome Hassan for joining this session. Thank you very much for coming. And then we have with us Mr. Indranil Rai Chaudhuri. Indranil Rai Chaudhuri is an alumni of the Film and Television Institute of India. And he also debuted his feature film. First one was The Coding in 2013. And the last one, just now he made Maya Janjal, which has been selected for the New Talent Competition section of Shanghai International Film Festival, which is going to be premiered there. And his two short films are very famous, very well known. One is City of Love, and another is Ekti Bengali Hotel. So we are very happy to have him with us in this session. And welcome, Andro. And then Mr. Shatarupa Channa. Shatarupa is a veteran filmmaker. She made her first feature film in 1998. Oh no, it is a highly acclaimed film. It was in Indian Panorama, and her last film, 7th or 8th film, it was also in Indian Panorama in 2015. It is Onno Apada. But Shatarupa is not only a film director. She has versatile qualities. She is a film producer. She is a poet. She is a singer. She is an actor, and she is a social activist, civil society activist. And she is a national award-winning lyricist as well. So we are highly privileged to have her with us today. Welcome, Shatarupa, and this session. And then we have with us Dr. Shubhajit Chattopadhyay, Shubhajit Chatterjee as well. Shubhajit is a professor of the Film Studies Department of the Jadavpur University. You know, the Film Studies Department of Jadavpur University is very famous worldwide. And the founder of this department, Professor Mihir Bhattacharya, who was a big patron of the Film Society movement, he used to tell us that, you see, we produce film scholars, not filmmakers. And we teach how to read cinema as a text. So we are very curious to know from Shubhajit today that how today they are reading Bengali cinema as a text, today's Bengali cinema. So this session will have 3 parts. In the first segment, I will speak for 5 minutes from their own point of view. They will address the topic, and then again they will speak for 3 minutes in the second round, and then we shall accept the questions from the uh, participants who are listening. So we request the participant to shoot their questions after the second round is over, because by that time many questions could have been answered. So first we shall request Otonu to speak. Otonu.
Thank you, Preminda. Thank you, Fipresci-India, for this webinar and for giving me this opportunity to speak. I think the present status of Bengali cinema has a direct connection with some major shifts which happened in the past. Uh, it all started around the mid 70s of the last century, and the history of Bengali films before that is all too well known. So, right from inception, Bengali cinema had a very strong connect with literature in terms of adaptations. So, be it the popular cinema or the alternative space. Obviously, in case of eminent filmmakers, the literary adaptations were profound. They were richly cinematic. Whereas in popular cinema, the literary connect at least provided some kind of depth in the plot structure and characterization, even if the film lacked cinematic sensibilities. So, around the mid 70s, this connect with literature was cut off. The reason that was cited was that the change of taste of the new generation that was coming up. And around that time, even the films of the greatest matinee idol of Bengal, Uttam Kumar, they were also not doing well. So many cinema halls, they started screening Hindi films. All these cinema halls were big patrons of Bengali cinema for a long time, but now they started screening Hindi films. And a sizable percentage of the Bengali audience also showed preference for watching Hindi films. The middle class, who were the biggest patrons of Bengali cinema, they turned to television around that time. Calcutta Doordarshan was set up in 1975. So the television culture was gradually picking up in Kolkata. And that was the time when Bengali film industry was going through the worst phase, literally. There was this increased burden of the taxes, the rift between producers and distributors that turned serious. And finally, the demise of Uttam Kumar in 1980. That ended an era of popular Bengali cinema. So then there was a complete changeover. Bengali cinema relied heavily on Hindi mainstream formula. The fights, the song and dance, the dialogues became racy, kind of over dramatic. And on the parallel front, there was the masters were still there. Satyajit Ray and Mrinal Sen were still working, along with a new group of brilliant filmmakers. There was the burning socio-political climate of that period that had a very strong impact. The film society movement was still committed to its role. It generated awareness and appreciation about cinema in general. And there was another very interesting thing that was going on. That is, the West Bengal government was continuing its production of meaningful Bengali cinema. And that was a big support. But the backbone of the industry, the popular Bengali cinema, that changed its base completely, totally. Now the audience got divided into rural and urban sectors. Now this was a very important shift. The industry focused on the rural base to combat the crisis of viewership in urban areas. And the theme, the tone, the text of Bengali cinema, all this underwent a drastic change. The inspirations continued mainly from mainstream Bollywood, and then later on, during the 90s, it turned to films from Bangladesh. And finally, with the turn of the century, it turned to South Indian blockbusters. Now, in each case, these inspirations, they brought in a set of new formula, and that served as a trend for a few years. Now, the audience in urban cinema halls decreased further with the option of watching films on television, on video cassettes, then VCDs, and finally the internet. So the lull period of Bengali cinema, which started during the mid 70s, continued for no less than 30 long years. So now we come to the present, the last 10 odd years, literally. Quite a few things happened. Cinema turned digital in the meantime. There was this multiplex boom. More single screen theaters closed down. The remakes, they flopped miserably, and so Bengali cinema touched its all-time low, and cinema halls turned empty. Now a new generation of filmmakers came in Bengali cinema around 2009-10, and whatever they have produced in the last few years, that is often criticized on several grounds. One, this is all the popular Bengali cinema of the current period. The criticism ranges from one that is, it's all a synthetic mix of sensational elements, popularly termed as a package, which lacks spontaneity, which lacks depth. Two, there is an obsessive tendency to make thrillers, suspense, and mystery stories. And lastly, that a very kind of loud and melodramatic version is inspired from television serials. Now, anything outside these genre, which try to break the conventional narrative modes of storytelling, they are mostly termed as the non-box office stuff by the media, and the audience is very undemanding, and often they reject such experiments. Now, this non-saleable branding that also drastically shrinks down its space in theaters. So nowadays, when the big banner Hindi films, which are slated to become blockbusters, they get released, they get about 18 to 20 shows per day in multiplexes, whereas quote unquote this non-mainstream kind of Bengali film, it struggles to get one show per day in a hall. So now let me conclude that one can only hope that the power of the box office will not finally weaken the creative roots. Because as we all know, the market has devices to bring instant results in some areas, no doubt about that. But ultimately, cinema is about the creative identity that is expected to break all barriers. Thank you.
Thank you, Atanu, for your brief and informative introduction. Now I shall request Firdausul Hassan to talk about it. Mr. Hassan. We cannot listen. We cannot hear you, Hassan. You unmute. You unmute your microphone. Your microphone is off. Yeah.
Can you hear me now?
Yeah. Yes. Yes.
First of all, a very good evening to all of you, and a very happy Eid Mubarak to all of you. I'll take this opportunity to thank the organizer for inviting me to take part in this webinar. So I was told to speak about the present condition and present stand of Bengali cinema in our country. So I will go a little back to describe the present scenario of Bengali cinema in our country. See, cinema had been introduced in our society more than 100 years ago. And in this long journey of 100 years, we have been facing a lot of challenges. And in spite of challenges, we are on the growth mode. In the 1970s or late 60s, when first television was discovered, that was the first time that we faced a challenge. We thought that a certain crowd will be shifted to television and there will be a less footfall in the cinema hall. But slowly, this Doordarshan, this television had also given extra income to producers when they were screening the old films in the television. And slowly, the television started producing their own content, fiction, non-fiction, both content, and slowly, people were getting work, new directors, new producers, new actor, new actress. And in the long run, television has given present few superstars to the film industry. And in the mid 80s, again, the biggest virus in the film industry was introduced in the form of piracy when video was introduced. When video came into our life, we saw that how film was, how piracy expand. In fact, if you can recall that at that time when a film used to release, the same day the video cassettes were available in the market. At in one point of time, there were more video halls than cinema hall. Then after that, satellite channel, then OTT platform. So what my point was that instead of all these challenges, for the last 3 years at least, there was a steady growth. I don't say regional films. I always call Indian films. So in totality, in Indian films, there was a steady growth in the last 3 years. So if you come to Bengal, we roughly release around 130 to 140 films per year. And around 70% of these films are produced by first time or second time producers. Now the point is that if you see in 2016 when first demonetization took place, and after this GST and after this Corona, so there was a. I'm audible.
Yes, you can. Stop.
Yes.
So when all these three things are coming, because film is in our film, we depend heavily on the private finance sector. So all this GST and all this Notebandi and all this Corona and everything, slowly we are lacking the finance and the producers. So our main challenge is now to whatever 70-80% producers who are coming, we have to create a market for them so that they stay back. As you know that we need cinema hall. Now there is a lot of questions going on about this OTT platform, people selling films to the OTT platform. But my view is that we need cinema hall. In Bengal, at least at one point of time, there was 700 cinema hall, and now it is reduced to 175 to 200 approx cinema halls left single screen. So if we don't have a cinema hall, a producer who is producing a film and he is unable to sell in the OTT platform or in the satellite, so what is the choice of him? His only choice is to release the film. If the film does well, he can go back to the OTT platform and sell it. So our first challenge is to, when the market reopen again after this Corona, our first challenge is to see that the cinema halls are back, and in the long future, we at least create some more cinema hall. Because I believe the beauty of this industry is that 90% of our film fails in the box office. But still, the industry is not shutting down. The industry is growing every year. So I will just summarize that in the future, since Bengali is the fifth spoken language in the world, we have to create a huge market. We cannot only depend on releasing film in this 175 cinema hall, in OTT platform or in the satellite. We have to have open a market at least international market, so that these new producers who are investing money, they get back their return, and new producer, new director, new actors get chance to showcase their talent. Thank you.
Thank you, Hassan. So now I shall request Indranil Rai Chaudhary to speak. Or you, okay, I'm keeping it like this. You speak. Indra is having some problem here there in the technical issues, I think. He has rejoined because of power failure, etc. is happening in that area.
Am I audible now?
Yes, you are audible.
I just logged out automatically.
Please.
Just taking up the cue from where Atanu and Hassan left. I guess we are discussing Bangla cinema and discussing where it stands now, precisely because we feel that there are things that are not quite right, in the sense that there are things that ails all of us, whichever side of the story we belong to, as directors, as producers, as film critics. We all feel in different ways that there are a lot of things that are not right now at the present moment. Autono did the right thing by starting from the past and kind of giving us a little bit of an outline of what happened since 1975. I would like to add on to a few points that he touched and kind of indicate to a certain key questions that I feel are kind of missing in the discussions about Bangla cinema these days. Now, this urban-rural divide of Bangla cinema, which actually dictated the content of Bangla TV, which dictated the entire distribution structure of Bangla cinema since, let's say, the death of Uttam Kumar. And this is also kind of an irony that the death of one individual being a kind of a watershed moment for a decline of an industry is also somewhat reflective of our attitude towards the industry. Also, nowhere in the world do you see an industry deteriorating so fast and so quick after the death of one individual. It says something about our understanding of popular culture, says something about the way we kind of depend and kind of thrust responsibility on an entire human being, which he actually was doing quite successfully during his lifetime. He left early, he left quite suddenly. Post that, the most important event probably in Bangla cinema is the making of this film called Shotru. Now, Shotru probably released in 1981, if I'm not correct, or 83. I could be wrong. 83. Now, Shotru is absolutely unique, and in the way it came, and it showed certain things. It was also tied up to certain historical realities that were happening in West Bengal at that point of time, which is we had the first left front government coming to power in 1977. And by 1983, which was the beginning of its second term, there was this first scale of land reforms that had just finished in West Bengal, meaning that there was some amount of money, let's say a little bit of excess money that was now floating in the hands of the rural audience, which was not there even 10 years back, right? And now that this extra money was there was this huge demand for entertainment for at the level of like small little shows that could be arranged in the villages. That extra money had suddenly cropped up. Shotru showed us that there was a huge amount of money to be made in the villages in West Bengal. It was a film that happened probably at the right time for itself. And suddenly, post Shotru, the entire direction of the content, the entire, the kind of people that got involved with the production of Bangla cinema, the people who started distributing, the people who started directing, writing, creating the entire content of Bengali cinema changed overnight. This whole thrust of Bengali cinema moved towards the villages. Even later on, much later on, when when Bengali cinema started copying Hindi films, then started copying Tamil and Telugu films, the entire core desire was to recover its cost from the village markets. And that made a huge shift from what was happening, let's say, in the 60s or the 50s, which we today, commercially term as the golden age of Bangla commercial cinema, is that at that point of time, what was happening is that the middle class was sponsoring uh, Bengali middle class, Bengali commercial cinema. The sponsorship of Bengali cinema changed post Shotru, and that nature of that sponsorship shift has been kind of being entrenched. It has increased. It has burgeoned over the years, and that has very deeply, affected the nature of the content that we have produced. It has also very importantly changed the nature of cinema halls. Now, this has kind of become a chicken and egg kind of a story, where if your entire thrust is to create content essentially for the villages, it is, if you realize that that's where the money lies, then essentially what you're doing is you are not paying attention content that is, good or commercially viable for the urban middle class audience. So your halls also start deteriorating. The fact that Hassan just talked about this whole decline of number of single screens from 700 to 200 is one of the main reasons. This is one of the main reasons why that happened, because the I come from a small town myself. I know exactly what happened in those halls. If you look at the price of the ticket, uh, over a span of 30, 40 years, there has just been an increase of, like, let's say about 10 to 15% in the price of tickets in the small town. As a result of that, the hall owners have not been able to tend to the halls. The hall owners have also wanted and also felt that their main patrons are people who come from the working, rural working class or the urban working class. So the entire infrastructure that distributed and exhibited Bengali films went down over the years, which, to my understanding, is one of the main reasons why money stopped coming in. The nature of the people who were involved with the trade changed. Also, the fact that what we consider to be the golden age of Bangla cinema, we consider Satyajit, Hrithik, Mrinal Sen as the trio who were making their best work from the late 50s to the late 70s. If this is the period that we consider Bangla, when Bangla films actually traveled a lot, did great things in the international circuit. We also need to understand the fact that these people were not doing things individually, sitting in a little island there. They were all byproducts of the Bengali mainstream. They were all people who were reacting, interacting with the mainstream. The technicians that they had gathered, the actors that they had gathered were all from the Bengali mainstream. So one of the reasons why Bengali cinema is what it is today, the reason why it doesn't do well internationally, nor does it earn money in the cities, is the fact that we have successfully, over a long period of time, destroyed our mainstream film culture. When I say our mainstream film culture, I mean that we have not at all, like, let's just take an example as to the amount of time, energy we spend in marketing a Bengali film today. If you compare that to the amount of energy that we spend in creating new content, in training writers for Bengali mainstream cinema, you would see that there is an abysmal, the huge difference between these two. Our entire focus over the last 10, 15, 20 years has been how to hype up a film, how to market a film. But there's been very little investment that we have made actually in terms of creating writers, training directors, and these training systems are available right now all over the place. I mean, these are things that are not very difficult to, even access. But there's been very little investment there, which is why the mainstream has deteriorated. The mainstream has gone out. Even today, right now, there is no real mainstream formula or structure in the Bengali cinema scene which works anymore. So we have an alternative in Bengal which doesn't interact, which is not like we're talking of an alternative, but an alternative to a mainstream that doesn't work, right? So I personally feel that all our discussions right now, as filmmakers, as stakeholders in this whole story, should be towards working out an original Bangla mainstream culture. That is what is going to kind of save or change the situation at this moment. A. we also create a fantastic alternative, because alternatives are something that always arise out of a reaction and not as a byproduct of the mainstream, and not something that happens because or in spite of the mainstream. Broadly, that for now, I guess. I'll just take a break because I think I just need to switch on the lights here for this. Can you hear
Okay.
me?
Yes, yes, very
Yeah.
much. You have your power has been come as okay.
Yeah. It just come
Okay,
back,
good.
so I'll
Okay,
yeah,
you change it. By that time, we are shifting to next speaker.
yeah. Thank you.
Okay,
Thank you.
come back as early as possible.
Yeah.
Thank you, Indranil. Now, Shatarupa, please. Again, your audio has gone, Shatarupa.
It was off.
Yes,
Acha,
yes.
sorry.
Fine. Please
One
continue.
thing to tell you that I couldn't hear a single word. I couldn't hear a single word of Hassan,
Oh,
which was very important because he is the only producer here, as a successful quote unquote producer of today's session. Otanu has told, and also Indronil has added, I almost fully agreeable with both the directors. One thing I just want to add with their points. Since last 20 years, I'm with the filmmaking things. And when I started my career, at that time, the films which used to, the Bengali films mainly, they were divided like the urban and rural things, and of course the mainstream and the art films or alternative films. And people used to tell the cities or the urban people, they gives a film honor or prestige, and the rural audience, rural audience give the money. That is the business. This was the drastically these two points were there. I'm not. Am I there?
yes. We can listen. We can hear you. No problem. Just your video was a
But
little bit.
acha, acha, maybe there is some problem. Acha.
Hmm.
Thing is
But we
that
can
what
hear
I
you.
wanted to share, that that time people used to think in the way the business should be done in such a manner that the film will fetch honor from the urban people. I mean the urban theater halls, and from rural, the film will do the business. It was a clear cut thought of that time when I started my career. But after 20 years, what I feel right now, the of course, from 700 cinema halls, the cinema halls has reduced to some 2000, 250 or 300 something. So of course, the outlet, we have the products, but the outlets are not there. So this is one big problem. So and also the main competitor for a Bangla film, whether it is good or bad, that I am not considering. I'm just telling about the regional Bangla film. The main competitor for a Bangla film is blockbuster big films, the Hindi films. This is the one thing. This is for I mean the business thing for which the producers come forward with their money. And the most I mean the poorer thing which are happening, that is the lacking of the good contents. Otun was describing about the dependence on the literature of Bengali literature or some other literatures from where Bengali films used to take their content. But nowadays, I mean, in between the times, the people or the filmmakers or the television serial makers, they were dependent on somehow jatra or folk kind of melodramatic subjects. And right now, at present, where the Bengali film stands, I have two things to which I noticed. One is the Bengali film making has become somehow it's a cottage industry. It's not a big industry. I am not considering the big industry as a whole. in my discussion, because see, the main the big films or the big banners who are producing the films for the main business, I'm not going to discuss, I'm not going to take them in my discussion, because they have already captured the market, and they are actually conducting the regulating the taste of the audience. Like they decide what the audience will take or what the audience will reject. But I don't know whether they have done any survey or not. This is one thing. And another thing, I have observed that many young people, not only young people, many people who were not at all attached to filmmaking or film business or film school or anything, but they are making films. And of course, not everybody is doing a very good films, but they are trying to do films, Bengali films, and somehow it has become a kind of cottage industry. Like every year some 100 200 films are making, but there is no outlet. Only 200 or 250 the film halls are there, where mostly the big banner Bengali films and the Hindi films, and of course English films are also getting released. The alternative films or alternative thought processes which are going on, and which should be welcomed by the audience, they are not getting the chance to get the outlet. This is one big problem which I think this is Bangla film actually facing nowadays. Um, you may remember, I can tell you about two names. One is Sahoj Pathir Goppo, another is Bhuter Bhovishyot. These two films, you may know, I think you should know that these two films were not getting any chance to get released because of their not so popular actor actresses or the big banner. And after that, when they got the chance, the what was the result that we know. So what I just want to, I intend to tell you that the big houses or the big people who who uh, who demand that they know the taste of Bengali audience, that is not true. Bengali audience should get the chance to taste some other kind of films also, which they are lacking. This is all that just I wanted to tell you.
Thank, okay, thank you, Shatarupa. So now we will listen from Shubhajit.
Okay. Hello and thank you.
Indranil will join very soon, and Shatarupa will be visible. She has got some network problems, so camera was off and only microphone was on. Now, please, Shubhajit.
Yeah, thank you, Ravindra. Thank you, Fipresci and Ravindra, for inviting me to comment, and very good evening to everybody. I will, Otanu and Indranil have done this very good and useful job of going back to history and giving us a brief survey of what has gone on in the past and what are the kind of shifts. And I'm thankful to Kobe for reminding us of that very crucial moment, Shotru-centered moment, and what he has been arguing as the two byproducts of the industry. Because I'll come back to that point if I can in a moment. So what I'll do is, since I have been asked to comment from the perspective of a film scholar, and in a profession where we teach international cinema, we teach new trends, and we teach film history, and we get students from all over India. Though there's a bulk of in the Adapur University, the bulk of student community is from in the outskirts of Bengal or within the region. But keeping this in mind, what I will do is I'll try to be a little provocative, and I'll try to bring the discussion over its head by going back to where Kobe stopped. See, the first thing is that in the opinion of most film scholars that I have heard, historians, serious film critics, people who write on world cinema and Indian cinema in the context of world cinema, Bengali cinema is not doing good at all. And I will be talking about the serious, well-meaning Bengali cinema. I'm not talking about the popular cinema at all right now. Right now, although, as Kobe rightly pointed out, these two are related. Now, why am I saying so? Uh, there are a few, far few and far sort of exceptions, but mostly, in my opinion, it is a restriction and a limitation of creative imagination coupled with shortage in professional or technical shortages, which is actually not a problem of the industry as such, but in my opinion, a symptom of the crisis of the larger Bengali community that the industry caters to. And now we have to understand, who does the industry cater to right now? Who does the new modern cinema? And while I say this, what I'm trying to say is that when we are making this distinction between alternative and mainstream, new cinema and old cinema, conventional cinema and unconventional cinema, we have to remember that it might very well be an industrial mechanism to capture the breadth of the market. There is a sector with a certain kind of demand where a certain kind of product works. There is another sector who demands a certain kind of product precisely because of their upbringing and their cultural prevalence, preferences, etc. And for the last 10, 15 years, a new kind of cinema has emerged. It has successfully captured a very small part of the market and doing quite well in general appreciation terms. Some of them have also done good business. Now, let me give an example and come to the problem. In a recent film I was watching by a very young filmmaker, this film is about generation gap, between parents and children. And this school kid who is overwhelmed with the sort of over attention that the parents pay him, on the street suddenly turns around and faces the camera and says that, to the passerby come spectator, that, you're not understanding what is going on, then you must be a non-Bengali. If you were a Bengali, you would have understood it immediately. Now, one of the most ironic symptoms of today's Bengali cinema, if you look at this film and the range of films, and at most of them, not all of them, you see, they deal with problems which are highly esoteric. The people who watch these films all over the world are resident and non-resident Bengalis. Now, if you were to claim that in the audience there is somebody who is international, and that he or she doesn't understand precisely because the content is highly, local, then there is a problem at hand. That audience does not exist, number one. And if that audience does not exist, if your audience is your own Bengali folk all over the world, then the question is, why does this kid protagonist go on describing everything he does with meticulous detail, claiming that they are so well known to every Bengali? Now, this is actually a problem. The problem is of a community seeking a certain kind of pleasure in learning about things that they already know. And if you look at this new Bengali cinema for the last 10, 20 years in the making, and recently more of them have come about, see, the first impression that I get from this kind of cinema, good, bad, average, whatever they are, that they are verbose. They are talkative. People constantly go on talking in them, most of them. Talking, meaning all kinds of talking. They talk to themselves, they talk to others, they accuse people, they explain their traumas, they give you free advice, they give you thoughtful, show thoughtful concerns about the world at large. Very lately, they have been cracking jokes, one-liners, every kind of thing, caustic, one-liners, speckled with poems. But they talk, they constantly talk, they move and talk. Now, the problem is that mostly this entire talk, in its entire kind of talk, is highly shallow. For example, it's often that you see that in a narrative, you try to misconstrue people seemingly having thoughtful conversation as thoughtful cinema. People discussing or criticizing the government as critical cinema. Now, the this is a misconstrual of a highest level, and the most problematic part of all this is that if you look at the way in which the dialogues are written, you will see that they cater to a very typical middle class imagination. There, in Kobit Shumon, the famous songwriter singer's word, "Chena Shukho Chena Duk." Your fond, your familiar pleasures and pain, your familiar discomforts and anxieties, your familiar spaces and people and characters. They could be painful stories, but if they're familiar, they give you some sort of a satisfaction. So what is going on is that the industry, precisely because they know that this is actually getting a certain sizable sort of audience and some sort of a appreciation in the community of Bengalis all over the world, they will constantly cater to this imagination. Every film is being written keeping in mind this kind of an insular imagination, where people will talk, people will think, people will again talk to each other, people will discuss very profound things in a manner that is, even, very, very far from profound. If you look at, let me, end with this. So again, I'm coming back to COVID, Indranil, to point out that this indeed could be a byproduct. There actually is no alternative cinema. This is a cinema which is a complement to the industrial cinema. This is not a cinema that is an alternative to the industrial cinema. And this cinema cannot grow until it has an international market, as Hassan Saab was saying. And precisely because it is so esoteric, it will not never get an international market. Precisely because it caters to a very insular imagination. These concerns, you take a film and that film has 4 poems, and I, who have never, read, and very unusual for a Bengali, but I don't read poetry. I never read poetry outside my textbooks. And in that particular film, a very, a thriller, I could identify all the, key poems. You see, what kind of imagination you're catering to is a very familiar one that wants to be comfortable, one that wants to know about anxieties and despair, that also that they're familiar with. Now, you see, this kind of cinema has another technical problem. See, the kind of sound devices we have, we use post-sync, we have to dubbing. This kind of verbose cinema is not suitable for an industry that is professionally not very equipped with sound also. And unless you have that depth of word, unless you can carry those words which are being said, if you want to make verbose cinema, to have some significance, they don't work, which is why they fall flat, which is why sometimes, people say, life is so patriarchal, and you start laughing. Whereas these characters are actually seriously talking to each other. And to end, you see that we also frequently see the unease with language itself. In the film that I was referring to, and this is a general symptom of Bengali media today, the characters are talking in double plurals. One plural for the Bengali, one plural for the English. Doctors ra, nurse ra. You see, when they're speaking English, they're not comfortable. When speaking Bangla, they're also not comfortable. The general idea is to produce a certain kind of familiarity in terms of language, texture, imagination, and even the words and spaces and objects that we see, that constitute our own, crisis, and that constitute. So I think that is if you take to be the and this is I think is a complementary kind of method. This is not an alternative cinema in sort of opinion of many film scholars and film historians who are reading into it, which is also the reason I think why they don't get successful entry into the international market. These kind of products will not get. You have to think of the product in different terms. Think of this audience in different terms. You have to forget this audience. That is precisely when you can make a significant film. You can have people talking sense, not blabbering about seemingly, philosophical things and seemingly thoughtful things. So, I'm being provocative, not against anybody in particular, but I think being provocative helps. And they may take on responses to and enable us to think further. So much for now. I think 5 minutes should be over by now.
Okay, thank you, Shubhajit. So your provocation will work, I guess, and there might be some questions from the participants as well after the second round is over. Now we are entering in the second round, and again starting from Atonu. So it will be good if you are motivated by the provocation of Dr. Chatterjee. You can speak, Atonu.
Yeah, it's always tempting to provoke about anything that is happening in contemporary Bengali cinema. Regarding this, the content being esoteric or the penchant to create familiarity, some kind of familiarity by or being very verbose. I think that is all offshoot of television to some extent, and also paradoxically kind of hangover from our own tryst with literature. I think these are the kind of examples that Dr. Chatterjee has said. I think they are open to a lot of discussions, and there are formulas. There are very definitive designed formulas which are there in contemporary Bengali cinema, and no doubt about it. But I would like to focus on certain aspects of the industry, the kind of problems that we face in terms of the working of the industry. For those who are trying to make something which is unconventional in terms of storytelling, only storytelling, I would say, and that storytelling is something which is whether it's abstract, no, it's not. Whether it's very personal and kind of individual indulgence, no. It's actually a very simple way to get away from the typical structure of beginning, middle, and end. So whenever there is any attempt to do anything which is out of convention, out of the conventional narrative mode, there are two responses. Now, before I go to the kind of response that we are going to discuss, I would like to mention that there are basically two ways of working. Now, one is that you go entirely independent in every sense of the term. You pitch your film to a foreign agency or a co-producer, and then maybe have a world premiere at some big festival, and you take that route. So you are not bothered about its release in here. Another way in is to be within the industry and do something worthy to keep yourself rooted to the industry. So in that case, you are contributing to the growth and consolidation of the industry. But at the same time, you have to face the hurdles and handicaps of the industry. Now, what are these handicaps? One is that what Hassan pointed out, that there is this, you have 3 or 4 options. One is the theatrical release, 2 is the terrestrial or satellite, 3rd is the OTT, and a very limited kind of 4th option, that is the international release, which is more or less limited to some shows in USA and UK. So what happens actually is the kind of infrastructure you have to build in order to recover the cost if you are working within this industry, that you are following this pattern of working. Now, whenever you have something which is out of the box, then there is the role of the media. Now, it's very easy to kind of reject anything or everything about contemporary Bengali cinema, but there are films which have the capacity to compete, at least on a national scale, in view of their social and human concerns, and also in terms of their exploitation of visual metaphors. Even in the past, there were some films or some directors who got recognition and many who missed the mark. But the point is that now we don't have anything, literally, which is called a constructive review. Now, what comes off as a review nowadays is that it is a kind of list made out by these so-called reviewers, that these are the things which doesn't make your film a mass connect. So it is this criteria of being mass connect is imposed on the film. One is regarding its structure. If it doesn't follow the kind of cause and effect structure, you have a problem outlined within, say, 10 or 15 minutes of the film, and then you work out towards a very neat kind of solution and ending to that problem. If it doesn't serve that purpose, then it is termed as a film which has no final denouement, that kind of a thing. Then there is this what Dr. Chatterjee mentioned as being verbose. If you have passages where you are in for a very evocative kind of exploration, it almost invariably gets a tag of being very slow. It has got kind of a very, very slot kind of a movement, and that is a definite no-no from the critics. So what the critics, they are playing the role of the trade analyst, literally. They are not analyzing the merits and demerits of the film, but they are actually proving to be some kind of a trade analyst who is passing on his or her judgment on the film. So this is another aspect to it. And now if we actually what I'm trying to drive across is that what needs to be explored are areas of nurturing. Because as we all know, we have been through a long period of almost 30 years of deep slumber, literally, when there was no mainstream, absolutely, and the connect of the mainstream provides the basic foundation of the industry. So we must remember that, and perhaps it is not wise to look back to glory that happened 40 years back. The times have changed. The logistics of the industry has changed. The priorities of the film festivals have changed. The film viewing culture has changed. There is nothing called the film society movement now. So actually, it's that is, I think, the main aspect of how things stand now. And I think Indranil would be, he would be able to carry on from here, from the perspective of a filmmaker working within the industry. Thank you.
Indro, are you here? Okay, or could we shift to Shatarupa? Shatarupa, you can hear? Listen.
Yes, I can hear. For last 30 minutes, I was just struggling to join you. So I am completely unaware whatever the discussion already
Okay, no issue,
happened.
no issue. So as long as Indro is joining, again, he is also having some issues with the electricity. So I will go to Firdausul Hassan so that you can understand what's going on in between. Basically, Atanu, what Dr. Chatterjee addressed the issue that the for a long time, the Bengali cinema is becoming very, very talkative. As if most of the Bengali films, Hassan, you are a very good producer, you know it well, very well, and you are the president of Film Federation of India, so you are watching films of all over the India, what's making there. Uh, yeah, you must admit that this sometimes we see that the Bengali films are the extension of theaters or jatra like this. Most of the films. So Atanu's point is very pertinent that the film criticism has gone down in Bengal, film society movement has gone down in Bengal. These are all true. But we are discussing about the status of the Bengali cinema itself.
Yeah, we will do
So,
that. Yeah.
so Indra, I'm coming to you later on because Hassan was there, so I have shifted to him.
No problem.
Okay.
Even the thing is that I will just say the business angle of the Bengali cinema, and rightly what Mr. Indranil have pointed out in his thought that the rural and the urban divide. So if you see that before the 80s, in theaters, all like the high class, middle class, and the lower class, they all used to go and watch the film, Bengali film. But in the 80s, when directors like Anjan Chaudhary, Swapan Shah, and all these people came, slowly, the films were made focusing the rural crowd. And somehow the urban was neglected. The all focus was to make a film that runs in the Gram Bangla. And slowly, we lost all the audience which we have in the urban area. They shifted to either Hindi cinema or maybe to video or satellite somewhere. Till Rituparna Ghosh came and the multiplexes were opened. Because if you see this multiplex, multiplex have a very important role to play. Mainly the people like us, the type of film we make, I make, or Atanuda, or Kubida, or Srijit, or Kaushik Ganguly. See, I am giving you one example. Like whatever collection, suppose I have collected in a film around 50 lakhs rupees box office collection. Out of that 50 lakhs, 46 to 47 lakhs is collected from the multiplex. Only 2 to 3 lakhs of that, maybe 5% or 6% are being collected from the single screen. And sometimes it is very hard to recover what of money we spend in our release from the single screen. And that too, this recovery is that too on what? Huh?
No, you continue, please.
Yeah, that too, this recovery is on 2 shows or 1 shows, what Atanuda has rightly pointed out, that we get 2 shows or hardly 1 show, and maybe maximum of 2 weeks. And after 2 weeks, these films are thrown away, or these films are pushed off by replacing new Hindi films or something like that. So my whole argument is this, that we should promote original content, because copy films doesn't work and we don't have that type of budget. We should promote original content, and we also have to change the mindset of the satellite, because if we go, this is my personal experience, when I go and speak with the satellite people, they say that you have done a very beautiful movie, your film got a maybe national award or in the panorama, but my satellite channel, I have to recover the money, so I need a film which will cater a C or D class. Your film is catering A or B class. So this is the mindset of the satellite, because you have to understand in the present scenario, a producer cannot recover his 100% money from the cinema hall. It's very difficult. So we have to depend on OTT and satellite. And even in OTT, in the national, only if Hoichoi or at the times 1 or 2 channel is there in our regional level, the most of the national channel, they are very selective about the OTT, about their product. Hardly they take maybe 10 or 20% of the Bengali films which we make are bought by them. So this is one thing. A second thing, that we have to increase the density of the cinema hall. Because if you see in Bengal, there are a stretch of 50 kilometers, 100 kilometers where there is no presence of a single cinema hall, or maybe now miniplex or multiplex. And in India, we are the largest film producing country in the world. We actually produce around 2,500 films per year. Out of that, 20,000, 2,000 or 2,100 films are censored, and 1,500 films get proper release. And out of that 1,500 films, 20 to 25% film doesn't get a proper cinema hall. And apart from this, we have a huge content of dubbed regional films. So my humble submission is that there is we need to promote our Bangla film. We have to get maximum shows. We have to promote the original content, and we have to have more halls. We are now 200, 175, 200, and I think according to a survey, India needs 30,000 screens. According to the population and the area of India, the survey says that India needs 30,000 cinema halls. So that is all for today from my end.
Thank you, Hassan. Kobi, Indro, you just
Yeah.
add the points here.
You can hear me, right?
Yes, yes.
Yeah. I kind of assume that we know what the problems are. I am sorry I didn't hear the entire part of Shubhajit's speech because I had gone out. But I get the drift of what he was saying, and I completely agree with it. There is a huge issue of imagination, of creativity in Bangla. Very, very, very few people, who really wait for a Bangla film anymore, especially the educated, intelligent audience who otherwise would not mind watching, let's say, a Tamil film or a Malayali film or even in Hindi film. There are fantastic, intelligent films that come up, even in the mainstream sector. We have 26 crore people, if you combine Bengal, Bangladesh, and West Bengal. So it's not that we don't have an audience. A huge part of that audience is also educated. They are well versed in, if not, the latest developments in world cinema. They at least watch Netflix, so they have a good tuning out to what is happening around the world, if not the whole world, at least in Hollywood. They have an understanding of what visual language is. So I don't think there is a lack of audience. I don't think there are, we are making content in an area where people are not, people just don't exist. People do exist, but they're not interested in the films that we make. This is a problem that we need to acknowledge, that our content, as in general, overall, the content that Bangla industry produces is far below the average IQ level of the intelligence Bengali audience. It's something that we need to first check, and that we also need to understand why this is so. One of the things that we talked about, this whole urban-rural divide, happened in the past and has been dictating the way things have moved. It's a fact, yes, it has happened. It has also determined the kind of people who got involved with film production, with direction, also the kind of people who started writing. It has determined the trend of writing also. The reason why Subhajit feels that the Bangla film is so very virtuous, yes, has a connection to its literary background, also has a connection to the fact that it also learned its writing from films that were influenced by the Jatra. So people need to express everything verbally, right? So we know the problem. We know that it is not making its mark. It is not going where it needs to go. It is also not drawing the right kind of talent. If I was a 22-year-old guy wanting to make films in Kolkata today, trust me, I would have left the city. The very fact that I'm too old to leave the city is the reason why I'm still trying here. Because this is not the place for a young filmmaker to try out his art, because he'll just probably not get the kind of a producer who would understand the kind of things that he is talking about, because he is probably getting influenced by stuff that his producer, his distributor, and people around him have not even seen. Right? His audience has seen that. The sad part of his life is that his audience is far more educated than the people around him in the industry. But the people that he goes to, pitches his script to, talks about it. Even the stars who he wants to cast, probably will not put their mind and energy and soul in the kind of project that he does. The fact that Okono is lamenting the downfall of Bengali film criticism is true, but I would again say it's a byproduct. Film criticism is always a function of the quality of film industry. If the film industry is by and large uneducated, film criticism is bound to follow suit. There's no problem with, because you get people who are like, that's exactly what happens. Now, what do? I mean, we can keep lamenting. The international film circuit as it exists right now is a quagmire by itself. I have myself put my foot there inside it. This film of mine, which went to Shanghai. I personally think that yes, it's a valid route, but I'm not so sure that is the way forward for a regional cinema to thrive. There could be individual excellences, there could be which would be rewarded. There could also be very bad films that could be rewarded. You have to also understand that in international circuit scenario also, because the parameters, mechanisms through which international films recognizes what should be Indian cinema is very, very different from what we understand good cinema to be. They have compulsions and equations that we have no clue about, right? And it's a different business, it's a different circuit. It has its own demands, and I wish that person well who wants to make his name in the international circuit. But these are two different enterprises. Making films in Bangla for the local audience and making films for the international audience. They ideally should be the same project, but they aren't at this point of time. Given the nature of our industries, they're so diverse, they're so different in their desires and what they accept. I I have my doubts whether these two can be bridged. What can be done? And that's all. That's what we are all bothered about, right? My clue comes from the fact that I'm not very keen about. I'm not very hopeful about halls coming up. Honestly, that's too much of a money being invested over too long a period. I don't see that kind of investment coming in West Bengal in the next 10 years. There has to be good reasons for people to invest. All all investment is not short-term investment. Film investment, by and large, in West Bengal is extremely fly-by-night in nature, and it would really need an extremely intrepid, courageous, and entrepreneur to invest in making 200 to 300 decent, workable halls in West Bengal. We don't produce that kind of content that will, sustain those halls. So inevitably, even if they get made, they will finally end up showing Hindi films very soon. Multiplexes, as Hassan said, yes, almost 70, 80, 90% of his revenues probably come from multiplexes. But the entire multiplex revenue model is meant for a Salman Khan film. You have to understand that. That's how it has been designed. If you look at the basic model of a multiplex revenue return, they will give you 70% revenue of the entire hall collection in the first week, and they'll probably get down to 50% by the time you reach the third week. A non-mainstream Bangla film will get its audience if it's lucky by the third week, never in the first week. The simple reason being it will not have the kind of money to draw people in the first week. So however much it tries, it will never be able to match the publicity of a big indie film. And by the time it is ready to reach its audience, probably it will be out of its hall. So while multiplex is the only alternative, only decent alternative that is left for a filmmaker, right now, it's not exactly the ideal alternative. What could be the ideal alternative? I don't think this alternative. Nothing is ideal. Nothing can be, perfect at this point of time. But if one looks at internet intelligently, not in the way probably Hoicho is looking at it, because it is exactly following the model of Netflix without having 1/100th of the quality of its content, right? You're using a subscription model when you don't have any reason for people to subscribe to your content. Netflix has a good reason why people should subscribe, right? Why will I subscribe to something? So an intelligent audience would not pay 200, 300 bucks per month or whatever that amount is to watch content that he can otherwise watch free, right? What can be done, and that's something that I'm hearing a lot, not from Bengal but from people outside Bengal, is the TVOD model. What we have today is the SVOD. SVOD is the SVOD model, which is what Netflix, Amazon, or Z5 or any of these streaming platforms use, which is subscription based. So it is subscription VOD. You have YouTube, which is AVOD, which is AVOD, which is advertisement VOD. But the third model, which is not exactly there in India right now, but which is ideal for regional cinema, and which is something that we need to talk about, is what we call the TVOD, or the transactional VOD, which is you don't need a subscription. You don't need to, be like a monthly subscriber to a channel to watch a film. You go to a channel and watch a film only when you want to, and you pay for the film that you are buying. So basically, what you're trying to do is you are trying to create a cinema hall in the air. Why I propose this is that it is far less cost intensive, than creating 300 cinema halls, which would be the ideal way to go forward on ground. You can't do that, but it's far cheaper to create a keyboard model. A, that. B, by doing that, you can combine and bring into your fold the most intelligent Bengali audience that you can have. Half of them live outside the country and the rest live in Bangladesh, right? I personally go to Bangladesh pretty often. I know that the average Bangladeshi audience is far more cued in to what is happening in world cinema, what is happening in the best of Indian cinema also, right? Unlike the Bengali audience here. And are much better people to approach with the kind of cinema that probably Otonu is wanting to make, provided he gets a decent price for that and gets an easy opportunity to watch that. This is the only way you can actually create a reasonable working mainstream in Bangla film. Films coming in from Bangladesh, films coming in from Kolkata, they could be mainstream films. I have no issues about that, right? Once you create that mainstream, then you would have good reason to draw in the kind of talent that would make cinema which would travel beyond the Bengali borders. But you need to create an economic model within your cultural borders, not the national borders, which could sustain itself and become the reason for people to join this industry and let's put it frankly, make money out of it. Because if people don't make money, then the best people don't come. It's as simple as that. However much we like art and want to die for it, our industry survives because of its potential to generate money and employment. And here we are not speaking our own personal lives. We are saying this is how it works. We need to create a model that survives. And keyboard, to me, right now, is a far more reasonable model that one needs to really look at if we want to take anything beyond that. And that doesn't restrict itself to just cinema. Today we can think of long formats. Today we can think of medium formats and even short films. And it could be a fantastic breeding ground for new talent and also training ground for them.
Okay, thank you, Indranil. So there is a solution from your speech, and now we will go to yes.
Can I say something?
I'm coming. Yeah, we have to conclude this session a little bit quickly because there are so many questions you have to answer. Again, you have to answer. So, Otonu, want to add something? Please.
Just one thing. Regarding any kind of VOD, Indranil, the issue is regarding piracy also, because as we found out in this last festival, the all-in-one festival, where all the biggies of the A-list festivals, they contributed to it, and the only two films which were there from India, they were all over the net no less than 5 minutes after the screening started. The screening of Nasir started at 5 in the evening, and it was all over the net.
Fine.
Film. Kobe.
I would like to answer that, Otonu. I would like to answer that because I think it's a very valid point. Now, the example of Ebaleu and Nasir that you are giving from this festival doesn't work here. Simply because you're dealing with YouTube. YouTube is we're not talking YouTube here. This festival happened on YouTube.
Right.
If you have your own keyboard platforms, now I'm giving you an example because I was in the virtual Cannes market just about 2 months back, right? That happened 1.5 months back. I was in the virtual Cannes market here. I was watching films through the Sinando app there, and they.
Indra is not audible.
Connection is
because the network. Okay, please continue.
Can I add one point?
Quickly, please.
Yeah, quickly. So regarding, it is very unfortunate that Bangladesh people, everyone watch our films. All my films are watched by them. Not only my film, all the other people's films are watched by them. But unfortunately, we are able to
They
do
have
any kind
created a
of.
system whereby the moment you log in,
Okay.
your
Okay. Okay. Let's
Connection is
continue. Continue, Hassan.
I think he is thinking that it's already on.
Mm-hmm.
I was saying about that this piracy thing about in Bangladesh. Second thing is that we tried to develop business with Bangladesh, but the problem is that if you see Pakistan, we have a not a very good relation with Pakistan, but Pakistan, our film get released. Not only released, Pakistan now have increased 250 cinema halls in the last 5 years. They have developed or reopened 250 cinema halls. Where in Bangladesh, if you go, Bangladesh used to have 1200 cinema halls. Now we have reduced to 150 only. Only 150 proper cinema halls are there. And only the producer, the hall owner wants Indian film, especially Indian Bengali films, to be released there. But the objection is always coming from the producer then. And now what they have a treaty now that import and export. But import and export is not possible always because their film hardly runs here. And our films will do better business there. And the second option is that joint collaboration. But joint collaboration, suppose you want to make a film that needs to be shot in Shantiniketan for the whole entire film. But how can you do the 50% there? How can you take two director, two music director? A lot of complication is there. So what we have already pursued from Film Production of India, and we spoke to the government, also with the central government, because when the central government or the state government goes, cinema is the last number. They discuss about everything, but cinema comes last. So we have taken this initiative, but unfortunately we were there in Bangladesh. I think you were also there. Shatrupati was also there. So that is on process. We are trying to open the border for Bangla cinema. That is one thing. And second thing, what Indranil was just pointed out about multiplex, that is only designed for Salman Khan film. I truly agree with him, because 7 or 8 days ago we had a meeting in of FICCI. So the meeting was called only to pressurize government to open multiplex. The main aim was this multiplex, their share value is going down. They just want to increase their share value. And after the meeting, the second day, the share value rose to 18% up. And if you see that when we release our film, we get 50% in the first week. The second week, it is 45%, and third week, 35%. Most of our film doesn't go till 35%. By second week, our films are off. So this is one point we are also negotiating with the multiplex, because this is the best time to put pressure on the multiplex. Thank you. These are two observations I had. I made it.
Okay. Now, Shatarupa, you just quickly you have to say something. You are not audible again. Your sound is going frequently. Not audible. No sound. No. Hello. It's not coming. Okay. Okay. I'm going to Shubhajit.
Yeah.
Second round.
Again, Shatrupati has come. No, the sound is not.
Sound is not coming, Shatarupa.
Okay, so I just finished it, round it up quickly. I mean, thank you everybody for this. I mean, Hassanji, for this nice pool of information that some of it I did not know about. The statistics, and it all helps. And Indranil's suggestion about that, I think he's maybe talking about the movie kind of subscription. I have to inquire him for detail. But coming back to what I was saying, and coming back to this question that Otonu raised about constructive criticism, you see, two things immediately came to my mind, listening to all of the others speaking. See, one thing is that if you look at, when I say, you see, all kinds of fiction films have people talking. It is not as if only Bengali cinema you have people talking. No. The problem is that it is a kind of cinema that leaves the impression of verbosity. While you take a parallel example, you take a look at a very conventional, popular, not extremely conventional, but Malayali film. And you look at something like Annayum Rasulam, a fairly, average love story. I don't like the film that much, but if you look for 20 minutes into the film, you'll see what you don't see in any Bengali film. A, there is an attention paid to the other things that constitute cinema: location, objects, material, textures, things, everything. So while people are talking and while conventional love stories are happening, you are also given the freedom to see at a lot of other things, and part of that thing is actually social life of people working. And by which I do not mean that you go to a factory and show laborers working. No, not that kind of labor. People working, people doing things which have a rhythm, meaning parallel to the story, not necessarily, you don't have to stop the story and, focus on something else. I'm not talking about any abstract kind of filmmaking. But let's say the example of this Anayam Rasulam going about Kochi, even if that film had a story which I did not particularly find very engrossing or palatable at the end, uh, I thought that it was a very beautiful kind of filmmaking, in this sense, a new kind of filmmaking, which does try to do two, three things. It pays attention to objects, dialogues, and things. And that makes sense. That brings out some bit of Kochi for you, some vantage point to look at who these people are. What I mean, apart from what is going on in their head, in their psychology, their anxieties, their whatever. This. The second example I had in mind is my friend who works in the Merchant Navy. He has been telling me for a long time that in his own ship, the crew, not the officers, not the culturally refined, let's say the chief officer or the sort of captain, but the crew who belong to South Indian states, some from Hyderabad, some from Chennai and related areas, have given him from time to time films on their own accord to watch. And he came back once with Paruthiviran. The other one he showed me long back was Subramaniapuram. Now, you see, Subramaniam and Paruthiviran, if you've seen those films, are not the kind of films that everybody is going to immediately watch. But somehow, at some point of time, mainstream cinema can actually bring down and produce an audience who can make out that this film is different from a Tamil film. This film, a Bengali, I can give a Bengali person to watch, and he may also understand something about it. This is not an esoteric film. This is not all about. But those films are very located films. So what I'm saying is that it is not necessary, to be abstract. It is neither necessary only to produce a different alternative model, but there is something to do with an imagination that things that a kind of cinema can be made and successfully transplanted elsewhere, in which everything is there to house people talking and expressing thoughts. By talking, what they do is they express their thoughts. That is not the business of cinema, to see people talking and expressing thoughts. It is to visualize thoughts. That visualization could be of an abstract kind. That visualization could also be of a narrative kind, with many kind of examples. So I was trying to suggest, because industrial figures, and some of which has been given, I agree with, but those are more known to other people who work in the industry. They know more better than me, definitely much better than me. But from where I stand, from where I look at a Malayali cinema, from where I look at Tamil cinema or a cinema from Hong Kong, I immediately see the difference. I immediately see why even the best film that are people consider to be highly valuable in the Bengali market is unpalatable in the international market. This content has to be changed doesn't mean you have to tell more expressive stories. This is the problem with the Bengali community. They think storytelling has to be expressive. The age of expressive cinema is also slowly going on. Storytelling and cinema is not for getting thoughts out. That is not cinema. I can speak about my anxieties to my neighbors and to my friends. Why do I want to see my anxiety being recited to me when I go to a cinema hall or a OTT platform? I won't see that. I want to see something else. I want to see how this Man moves his hand when he is talking. What are the other objects that constitute that space? Not by looking at them intently, but by in collaboration with what is going on in screen. This sense is what I think is cinematic sense. To produce through light and through framing a world that gives you a difference from what you already know.
Thank you.
Right?
Thank you, sir. Thank you, Shubhajit.
Cinematic.
Shatrapa, are you audible? Can you talk?
Yes, yes.
Please.
Yes, I can talk. Can I say something? I
Yes,
just
please.
want to add one thing. That the government policy regarding films, it should be very serious. This is one point. Another point, that you may remember there was one slot for the best of Indian films in Doordarshan, which has been stopped for a long time. I think it was last shown in 2016, most probably. After that, it has been stopped. So to reach Bengali films, not only the Bengali films, the other regional films also, which are getting selection in Indian Panorama, or which are going to the international festivals and getting national awards also, but people can't see the films. They can't watch the films unless Doordarshan and Government of India take some initiative to show the films. This is one thing which I want to add with your all points. Whichever I have heard, everything is very, very important and very, very rich. The discussion, whichever you have already done, and most of the parts which I couldn't hear, I don't know. I should, I mean, take from you people.
You will
But
get the audio recording. Entire thing will be recorded.
okay,
and
good. Another thing, as Hassan is there and the other good directors are there, I consider, still, you may also consider that still the film industry here in Bengal, although this is a very big revenue generating industry, still this is unorganized. You may agree or you may not agree, but which I feel that this should be addressed. The why the good films which are making, which are fetching good awards, honorable things, honorable laurels from the outside, but these are not getting the chance to reach to the general audience. This which I think that these people has different kind of tastes and the demands. The Bengali films, I don't know whether they can address all these demands and the different tastes of Bengali audience, because still I think that the big houses and the big maybe corporates or the big this maybe this is monopoly, which I can tell you, that they are governing the taste of the Bengali cinema, and success is only determined by the box office collection, which actually the I don't think that is true. That should not be considered. The what is the good film? If a good film only does good business, that will be considered a good film. But a good film which doesn't do the good business, that doesn't considered as a successful film. I think those days has gone. This is the thing I just
Thank
wanted
you.
to add.
So I will go for the questions, but before that, Indro, can you hear?
Yeah, I think I can.
You had a point which you left. It is in connection with Otonu's issue, and that is very important because there are some questions about that also. And we are also facing the same problem. We are running the FFSI online film festival. You know that eighth session is going on, and now Girish Kasaragul's retrospective is going on there. Just last week there was a film from Nepal, and the film was hacked and pirated and immediately uploaded in YouTube. So I had to talk to Kathmandu police to stop it, and I have to remove it from the YouTube immediately. So the same question Otanu was asking, and those films are in YouTube, but we are using the Vimeo paid platform. It's a professional platform. So you have something to say about it quickly, if you can say very quickly.
I was just sharing my experience in the Cannes virtual market, where there are lots of unreleased films that were available for distributors and agents to see. So now security is a big issue there. Of course, there are only filmmakers and distributors who are in a market like that. So mass scale piracy will not happen. Now, the example that Otonu gave of VR1 Film Festival is not exactly valid here, because I'm not talking of YouTube. YouTube is a Janta platform. It's a public platform. It can be downloaded by any, like you can download stuff from YouTube any moment of time. And I am absolutely sure that when they gave their films on YouTube, they knew and were very aware that their films would be pirated within 2 minutes. Nobody was expecting those films not to be pirated. So that's understandable. And I'm sure they got a substantial financial remuneration to offset that fear of piracy in the case of VR1 festival. What we are talking about is the technology that the Khan market, the Sinando people use, which is that if you have an account, which is what you need to have, the moment you get onto the film and you start watching the film, your ID is flashed as a watermark on the film all the time, right? So if you are downloading it, two things happen. You can stop it right away. I mean, there is a software that identifies a download that starts, right? A, that. B is that your account gets deactivated. So if you really work into the granular level of this technology, this is not YouTube. YouTube is not meant for streaming films. It is completely something else, and it knows that it will be subject to piracy. But a specialized platform like that can have lots of checks and balances. A, that. B, also, I would say, if you give this film cheap, you also reduce the the incentives to piracy to a great extent. Like, let's say, I mean, I see no reason why a Bangla film should not be given in 25 rupees. There's no reason. If I get a film in 25 rupees sitting at my home, that my desire to go to the torrent and download it and watch it becomes that much less. The advantage that we have is that we have huge numbers. I'm saying we have 26 crore Bengalis, out of which, even if we are very conservative, uh, let's say Otonu has an audience of 2 crore. Let's put it this way. I mean, if Otonu can exploit 5% of that audience with piracy, he's not going to be home. He's going to be home 10 times through, right? And it is possible to do that, provided you can intelligently use technology and use a price barrier that is very, very, very soft.
Okay. So we are,
just a minute, Preminda. I would like to add just two things. One is that I just cited an example. All-in-One Festival is just an example. I cited only because there were prestigious names associated with it. But this is happening, literally this is happening everywhere, because you have screen capture softwares there, and the geo-blocking is not working. So you have, you need not go for download. Actually, you can straight away shoot from the stream. Because my point is that there is an entire industry which is operating on this piracy principle. But regarding the other alternative which you suggested, that is the T-series model, which we all know, which was made famous during the 90s. So that is a different question altogether, and that demands a lot of financial logistics to be worked out. But the piracy thing is something which is happening on every platform. You name a platform, and I can give you examples. It's happening on Movie, it's happening on Netflix, it's happening on Vimeo, it's happening everywhere right now. And I don't think there is any very definitive solution to that.
So my point, Otonu, is this: that yes, let there be piracy, and let's give the films cheap. And how many people will you get in halls? I mean, if your film runs for 2 weeks in Kolkata, you would at the most get 10,000 people watching your film. If you go online, you will probably have that number in the first 2 hours. Let there be piracy. You will survive better with piracy. Trust me.
Thank you.
I think Hassan is here. Let's chip in Hassan's comment.
No, we are going to the separate subject. No, we are in the quality of this is a technical issues, and is very, very important, very interesting as well. But we have to conclude within 20 minutes more, 2 hours.
Sorry.
So I am going for the questions. First question I am taking from Mr. Santosh Babu Senan. Do you have a middle stream of Bengali films that do well in the theaters? Who would like to answer the questions? Hassan, you may tell that. Do you have a middle stream of Bengali films that do well in the theaters? Have we got any middle stream? We can't hear you.
I think this is Atanuda's question. Atanuda can answer it better.
Atanu, please answer it.
No, actually, it's very difficult to chalk up a definition for this middle stream. But there were quite a few directors in the past who kind of served as a bridge. There were many directors in Bengal like Tarun Majumdar, Tapan Sinha, Piyush Basu, and all those, who combined the very best of artistic sensibilities along with a model which was largely populist. So right now, yeah, I personally think that the kind of urban cinema that is now going on, and against which Shubhajit has a lot of reservations, that can be termed as a kind of middle stream. Whether it's doing well at the box office or not, that I can't vouch for that.
One recent time example I can give, one middle stream film, that is Abhisen.
Okay.
Wow,
Second question is from Mr. Manas Basu. How to bring back the audience in the theaters, or what change contents need to weave in? How to bring back the audience? Who will like to answer the questions? Anybody can answer? Zan or Indra, you can talk that. How to bring back?
I mean, the simple way, you have to make better films. We make bad films. Let's accept that as filmmakers. I mean, we make horrible films. Why would I, if I was a Bengali film audience, I have a stake in the Bengali film industry as a filmmaker, but if I was a film-going audience, I would not pay. Simple. I would not pay to see the stuff that gets made most of the time. I mean, maybe 2 films a year, maybe 3 films a year I'd like to pay. And I know at least 500 people whom I personally know who will tell you the same, because they don't have a stake in the industry. You simply make that.
Can I say something?
Yeah, sure.
Can I say something?
Please.
And one thing is that we are every time we are considering the urban audience because the multiplex and all even the single screens which we consider all are urban. I mean, in our consideration, a big amount of Bengali audience are there in the rural area. If we want to cater them, we will have to give them the outlets, that is the cinema halls. Maybe multiplex, maybe small cinema halls, but it should be there. And out of our 10 crores of Bengali audience, I think most of the audience are from rural area. We should address that.
No, one point I want to add. See, now we have to exist along with satellite, OTT, and television. So we have to make content which is cinema hall, which is for the big screen. I think that is we have to work on. Our content should be for masses who will go for the cinema hall.
Okay. So this question I will request Shubhajit to answer. Ranjan Ghosh has asked this question 3 times. He has repeated, so he is very keen to know the answer, I think. What can be done to improve the quality of reviews here?
No, well, these are very generic questions, very difficult to answer, because you see, I haven't read a very good film review in a very long time. If by review you mean something that is written in a newspaper, and review, as Atanu and Indranil pointed out, are industry mechanisms. A film reviewer is doing something within the trade of film. He's an insider. He's not somebody outsider, as ideally you would like to, suggest. So, if you're talking about good film reviews, then good film reviews mean only one thing: something that attracts the audience to come to the hall and watch the film. That is from the perspective of the producers, right? If you mean good film criticism, then good film criticism, not scholarship, that is again a different issue. But good film criticism of an independent kind should be able to see beyond individual films, should be able to see beyond Indranil and Atanu and X and Y and Z. What is going on? What are the patterns? How in comparison to other things is this thing faring? What is wrong, or what is working or not working? And how do I relate these observations into some kind of a coherent argument or observation? Now, this may in the end, end up appreciating certain things and depreciating certain things. But then that wouldn't matter to the film critic, right? So I think what is immediately the answer to the question is everybody should be made film literate, like theater literate, film literate, and these kinds of education should be started very early on in the age. Not maybe as a compulsory something, but that way that process is already on. I hear of my daughter's school having a film society. I hear people coming there and talking. The quality of those presentation should be up to the mark. They should be given by people who have studied cinema for some time. They should be given by technicians who have worked in the industry and have something significant to say. And there should be an open mind to include as much as literacy, as much training on cinema at a very basic level from a young age. Then even if that person, that boy or girl, grows up to be a pilot or a doctor or an engineer, he or she may actually reserve a part of his or her life to engage with film. That's the only way. I don't know of any other way.
Thank you. And this is the last question I'm taking. It is from Santosh Babushanan again regarding independent films, because they are having a movement there in Kerala of the Independent Filmmakers Association type of thing. Regarding independent films, is there a lack of sufficient viewers, or is it the lack of release possibilities? This is a question that is very frequently being asked to us in the Fipresci platform as well in the Federation of Film Societies of India platform regarding this independent cinema. We are planning to have a session separately for this one, whether really there is any independent cinema at all in India, and if it is, how it works. But particularly for this question, I would like to get the answer from Kobi, if you can tell, and anybody can add also. Regarding independent films, is there a lack of sufficient viewers, or is it the lack of release possibilities?
But as I said, I mean, I have to go back to the main thing. I mean, main question that in order to have an independent cinema, you need to have a good mainstream. I mean, you need to be independent of something. You're not independent of anything. There is no mainstream here. Kerala has a very, very thriving mainstream. They do very good business in their own halls, which is why there is a section of filmmakers from Kerala who are carrying out this independent movement and cinema movement. And they do face a lot of problems. I'm sure they have a paucity of halls and they need to come back to the festival circuit. Yes. But in West Bengal, I think the situation is that you are as mainstream or as independent as you decide to be. It depends. There is no industry classification as such. The only way the industry will classify you is by the number of stars that your film carries. If I make a very arty film, very obscure, arty film, which has, let's say, 6 stars, I would probably be considered a mainstream cinema just by the number of stars that I can afford. If I do exactly the opposite of making a very commercial film, very, very mainstream film in its sensibilities, but that doesn't have stars, I would be classified as an independent filmmaker. So it's a funny conundrum, and I'm sure we are not even at the stage to deal with that. Let's even find a thriving, workable industry first, to then proceed on to create independent films. What we consider independent films right now are films that travel back to Calcutta to festivals, or are made at small budgets and get small releases. I don't know whether that's a good definition. There is definitely no movement there, and there is no cohesion amongst filmmakers there. This much I can vouch for.
And on this issue, anybody wants to add something on this independent cinema issues? Atanu, you want to say something about this, or Shubhajit, or Hassan?
Nothing in particular. I mean,
Nothing. Okay, I couldn't find any specific questions anymore, which is interesting, and there are many observations. So Shaturupa has already left. So let us conclude the session. We are already about 10 minutes to 2 hours. Thank you very much. Thank you, Hassan, for giving us time, and Indro, Atanu, and Shubhajit. Thank you very much for this session. This session will be available online all the time in the Fipresci-India YouTube channel. we are creating an audiovisual archive on the with the contents of audiovisual content, so that the people can use it for their purpose. It is Fipresci-India YouTube channel. So it will be available there from tomorrow onward. And on behalf of Fipresci-India, we thank you all for joining this session. Thank you very much.
Thank you. Thank you.
Thank you.